I do recommend the controller style B, by the way. I think control type B in this game is better than A. Mostly because for doing those like tap moves there, I can just drum roll on my R1 to attack, and also my primary attack's R1, secondary attack's R2, kind of like Souls game. Dodge is B where it should be. I'm not 100% crazy about the left trigger being the special move button. I kind of wish it was square, and that left trigger was the shift. Let me just swap square and L2. Like, can I do that? Can I do that system level actually? I think that actually might be better. Yeah, I'm swap because basically, okay, square in control type B is acting as the shift, which lets you activate your different abilities, like your cooldown abilities. So now my cooldown on that one will start. There, my cooldown on this one will start. Cooldown ability, cooldown ability, cooldown ability, and cooldown ability. That's what I got right now. Now, if you look at the dots in the bottom right corner of the screen, like right where it says local map in the bottom right, you'll see two red dots, 2 green dots, and 2, I think they're blue, but they look kind of purple there. I guess they're purple, whatever. Yeah, so the purple one just came back, and one red one just came back. So you see, and then that purple one. So now I can always see what each of my cooldowns are here for each of the 3 current skills that I have, or like damage types. So that stuff is really cool. The weird thing about it is it doesn't really feel like you specifically need to use any tactics against any different enemy types. Like there's not stance break. Well, I guess there is stance breaking, and there are a few things. Wait, maybe I'll revise that. So on standard enemies, it's kind of just do damage and that's it. Elemental damage doesn't really seem to have an effect. You don't see weaknesses. You will see critical hits in the form of yellows that come up. But it's like I don't find that I need to be using my Phoenix abilities against some enemies. Like there's not really any variance in damage type, you know? And not that there needs to be. It's just, it's one thing to consider about the depth of the combat. The feel of the combat is great. It feels very, very good to play, least of all because it actually runs well in combat. Custom button assignments? Yeah! Okay, for this game. Okay. And, yeah. So, yeah. Cool. Let's see if this actually makes the gameplay better. I honestly think it might. Because, yeah, see, now I'm shifting with the L2 button. And my special attack will be with that. And that will mean I'm going to be much less likely to mix up my dash and dodge, because that's been happening. When I was using L2 to do the dash attack, which is also the scorpion attack, like the get over here. And in a really weird way, although I guess for it being the L2 button, this does make some sense. The thing, although that's a problem there, so I'm gonna have to be sneaky with this, because that's awkward to do square and right stick. Although it's tap to activate. Actually, that's not so bad. You don't have to hold it. Okay, actually, never mind. I didn't really need to do that. But now I have... Oh, though, I have the ability to now do this on my back paddle there. See, this is why I gotta get back paddle controllers, everybody. Oh, you know what I just noticed there? Here, take a look. Look at the wings of that, that enemy. See, it's running at like 10 frames a second? That is probably one of the things they're doing to control the performance. There's like 3 frames in each wing flap. There's like a bottom, middle, top. Bottom, middle, top. Do you see that? Like, you guys tracking that? Like, is it only me who's noticing this stuff? I hope it's not. I'll feel so insane. But like, I mean, seriously, that's what I'm seeing in the distance there. And then as I get closer, there. Now it has wings, right? Like now there's frames of animation between the beginning, middle, and end of the flap. Where, boom. Oh, wait, no, not quite. There. That's the moment. You see him? I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. Please tell me I'm not crazy, somebody. The side quests, some of them are too good for me to be skipping them. They're too valuable to easily disregard. But they're not valuable enough to absolutely prioritize. At the same time, one thing I'll give this dev team a lot of credit for. The way they pace them out makes me want to do them, because it's usually only ever, hey, knock out 1 or 2 side quests before the main quest, yes or no. And they're not that long generally that you really have to worry too much about it taking you off your path. Then again, it did yesterday when we first got to Rosaria, or Rosaria. How do they say it here? Rosaria. How you liking the game so far? I have mixed feelings on it. I'd say that's probably the best way to put it. I'd probably be a lot easier on it if it ran like beautifully, because then I'd be like, okay, this is just a really good character action game. But my problem with it is the performance in this game, I think, radically impacts the experience to the point that, or at least for me, because I tend to be pretty sensitive to shifting frame rates. So this is the performance mode, and it doesn't even try for 60 FPS for the most of it, which is mostly frustrating because I know this game's capable of it because it scales things down for combat, probably in 720p, but you know what? I can see what's going on in combat, and the input latency is good. It depends on what you consider a performance issue, because I consider this, like, here, take this for example. I'm actually in the perfect spot to test it. So right here, when I'm looking out at nothing, that is beautiful. Like when I move the camera between these arcs, that is 60 FPS. But if I go over here, if I look at anything, that chugs down to the 30s. I don't know how you would not see that. Like, I mean, I understand that I'm more sensitive to it than other people, but I've had a lot of people say, oh, this game runs great. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, really? Like, great? Does it? Like, I mean, I could say maybe, like, it's playable. I would say that much. I have at no point said I have not enjoyed the experience of playing this game, because I think it actually is quite a good video game. I just wish I could pop open the settings menu, go over here, and have more options than just frame rate or graphics. Because of the way it scales down in combat, I know that this game can be running at 60 FPS even when there's crazy shit going down. But they don't want to let you make the graphics any less pretty than they want them to be. And I don't give a shit. I'm just like, I don't care about the graphics really at all. Like, I mean, if this game looked like Final Fantasy XIII, like go back 6 mainline Final Fantasy games, and it ran perfectly, like flawlessly, with the exact same gameplay, exact same game design. I'm not saying change the game to make it more like 13, but I'm saying if just the characters look like the characters in 13 do. That's kind of all I'm saying. Or 14 for that matter, because 14 is a locked 60 FPS on my Steam Deck. Where I think this game strays too far away from JRPG is it's got a strange structure, because at any point you basically have your airship from day one, essentially. Like, and there you don't really, because you're in an airship that's crashed and that's your base, but you just fast travel in this game around a map. And sure, fair enough, but off the bat, that's a pretty big thing removed from Final Fantasy, the overworld. You know, like being able to walk, like, because really, would it have been so hard to, instead of having fast travel, have it be that you even walk a character around a world? Have it be a much bigger thing than just this map. And yeah, it would make the traversal a little bit different. But, you know, like a top-down view, if you have like an airship that you fly, or like a chocobo that you ride or something. So that stuff being, that was in 15. It was in a different way, but the whole world was the overworld map. And that's not nothing, right? It's like, okay, they made it more like a Western open world action game, and I agree with that take on Final Fantasy 15, sure, but it still had an overworld. It still had a main story quest. It had a lot of side activities you could do. You could raid show. Like, there was a lot about 15 that felt very RPG-ish. What's interesting about 16 is there are sort of open world areas. Like, I think here, I'll go into one right now, because why not? I've kind of stopped giving a shit about the storytelling in the side quests, because I think the one about the death games with the nobles, those seemed like they were flukes, because all the rest of them have been not quite as interesting since then. I think that the type of game and the pace that this story and the action have, this game would be more well suited as a more linear, like Devil May Cry style action game. Because ultimately, the exploration and the fetch questy side quests, walking around a world that is beautifully designed, but frame rate chugs like crazy with an insane amount of motion blur that's just added to everything as you're like turning the camera around and stuff. It's really not a great looking game as far as its performance is concerned, even though it's like any given screenshot is beautiful. Like you can make this your desktop background just at any angle. I could turn around any corner, and yeah, this game has beautiful screenshots. They're stunning, they're unbelievable, they're art. But you know what? Like, I'd be okay if this looked like a PS4 game and ran perfectly. I'd be 100% more okay if that version existed. It was like, hey, do you want to play Final Fantasy 16 or Final Fantasy 16 4K, where it looks like this? And you show me that screenshot, I'll be like, yeah, that looks really good. Show me the other version, though. Show me the PS4 one running on this PS5, and it's the same gameplay, the same story. There's just slightly fewer polygons. The textures are not quite as good, and the shadows aren't quite as soft and beautiful, which even in this mode, they're not really. So, like, I mean, you can go to, the graphics mode. Yeah. It's like, yeah, those shadows are worth this frame rate. Like, I just don't think so, man. Like, I think this looks like a blurry mess, like when you're turning around like this. Whereas this would look sharp and clean if it was in Final Fantasy XIV. And Final Fantasy XIV runs beautifully on my Steam Deck, which is way less powerful than this PS5. So I'm just like, man, I want that option to do that. So if this game was absolutely nailing its performance, I think I'd have maybe a different take on it. And I think that if they made it just a linear, because remember, Devil May Cry 5 runs at 60 FPS on a PS4, on a base PS4. It's not a PS4 Pro only thing. And Devil May Cry 5 looks great. And this is a Devil May Cry type game, really. Like, there's a few more open areas that you can run around, and the performance looks like shit when you're doing it if you're in the performance mode. You can ride a chocobo a bit, but ultimately you're doing fetch quests and stuff, so it's like, well, okay, but do I need to do this? Or like, if these stages and the dungeons were more complex and bigger and had more enemy variety and were much more focused on just making a really solid action game where you have builds and things like that, maybe, but you can use all these different elements because you're what do they call them? Ifrit, but they use some term for him now. Here, oh wait, I can use the lore guide. Did I not have Clive? Man, I can't just see all the lore? That sucks. Okay, I thought that was going to be a little bit easier to do. But anyway, so you'd still be able to make a really great game, and it could still have this exact same story. And the reason I know that is because this story is basically me going from red checkpoint to red checkpoint, watching amazing cinematics, and sometimes doing green checkpoints that have mediocre cinematics every now and then. And every so often, one of the green ones is really good, because again, the story with the nobles and the children and the death games were both horrifying, and it kind of took me off guard. I was like, oh shit, this was some pretty good storytelling here. So I'm not saying it's all bad, but I'm saying that you don't really need it. Like, it's not really the meat of this game. It seems like it's thrown in there to kind of make the argument that it's like, yeah, well, still a JRPG, you know, there are side quests. It's like, well, okay. But, like, I mean, the gear system is really, really, really bare bones. Like, I rarely have to, like, visit people to talk about my gear. I've got 3 things which I can equip. You can upgrade them a few times if you do some side quests and get some materials. You've got 3 different charms that you can use for buffs, including buffs that just make the combat irrelevant if you use these ones. The Ring of Timely. Ring of Timely just means, okay, you will automatically evade every attack. Like, this is essentially an invincibility cheat. Unless it's undodgeable attacks, those ones maybe you won't be able to avoid. But if it's like a, hey, time dodge, you have perfect dodging if you add this, or something to that effect. Is that it? Wait, fleetness of foot, lightning fast. When Kai will automatically evade attacks as long as the attack can be evaded. Yeah, so it's, yeah, you know, like there's things in here that can really turn off the difficulty if you want to. I do like this system, and I think you could keep this. Like, as is too, yeah, sure, and having 3 of them does keep it balanced. But considering the way the combat works, you could just scale the difficulty and just let me equip 6 or however many icons you end up getting. Icons are effectively your weapons. You only have a sword, but the different abilities you have, and they change your skills, change your attacks. So you can equip 3 weapons at a time. You switch them, at least with this control scheme, with the triangle button. But be careful on how you twist your wrist to do tapping things, because I hurt myself playing a video game, everybody. I'm a soldier. I'm technically still in the military. I've lost a limb. And I hurt myself playing a video game on a console with a controller. Never once hurt myself playing a PC game, for the record, with a mouse and keyboard. I know how to control my ergonomics there. I don't hear, and yeah, God, the puppies were disappointed. Would I recommend graphics mode or frame rate mode? It's tough to say, because I think that you might actually have a better experience if you can deal with the combat at 30 FPS. If you're okay with that, if you're totally fine with it, I think just go graphics mode, because then you won't be constantly switching your brain from 60 FPS to 30 FPS. I prefer, I can't sacrifice the 60 FPS combat. It's the thing, I can't. It's so much better to, because the combat just runs beautifully. The combat in this game runs fine. So I don't get why walking around the towns is like, oh, like, we have to have the graphics cranked up. You're looking at our cities, baby. I'm like, yeah, but can I turn them down a little so that this game doesn't run like my PS5 is dying? Overall, I think this feels like the demo for the PS5 Pro version, or the PS6 version, or the PC version, because this game really had a lot of trouble performing, and when it was performing well at 30 FPS, and when it is, I guess, the motion blur is so intense that it's kind of disgusting to look at in a lot of ways. So even the times that I tried to give 30 FPS a shot, I just couldn't really do it. I do like that they had the battles target 60 FPS. It's a start. I think this game would have played a hell of a lot better, though, if it was like Devil May Cry 5, in the sense that it just ran at a locked 60 FPS at all times, no matter what the hell was happening. And by the way, Devil May Cry 5 still looks really good, everybody. The difference is they didn't have to worry about big, giant environments to try to trick people into thinking this was like a mainline Final Fantasy game with a big world to explore. So they crammed a bunch of that stuff in there. The game kind of runs like trash when it's trying to render that. So when you're exploring the world in performance mode, it doesn't even come close to 60 FPS unless you're in a dungeon. And if you're in a dungeon, it's still got to be one where you can't see a whole lot of stuff. But I think that there is a fantastic game here. They would just need to streamline it, make it so that it's just this story, the dungeons, and the slap that 120 FPS at 4K. They wouldn't lie, Mark. Well, I mean, luckily they didn't advertise this game that way, but that is what they say the PS5's capable of. But it's like, yeah, but if you try to cram every bit of visual fidelity and every little trick and graphical upgrade that you can, the game is still gonna run kind of shitty. So I just realized X-Ray Girl's mic's been on that entire time, so it's probably been a little echoey, and I guess that didn't really sound fantastic until just now. So I apologize for that, everybody. But anyways, the combat, though. Combat is a lot of fun. I really like the different power sets that you can get, like the different weapon sets, essentially, like the different summons that you can call upon to get different abilities that all operate on cooldowns. You can have 6 cooldown abilities at a time. You can choose to have an ultimate or not, which I thought was kind of an interesting choice. It's like, okay, well, I can't afford to fully upgrade all their ultimates, but I can maybe get this one pretty high up there, and oh, maybe I could add this one and that. Like, there's some choices to be made, and I think that that's kind of cool. The downside to that is the choices don't matter at all, really. You will have 2 types of damage: stun damage and health damage, and magic damage. So magic damage can do either stun damage or health damage. It's just there's certain enemies who have shields that need to be broken by magic damage. Nearly every attack in the game, except for like 3 of them, use magic, so it's not really that hard to do. So the thing is, though, like what I was saying by it doesn't require use of all these abilities, because there's nothing in the combat except for those like do magic damage of any kind. There's nothing that necessitates using any specific ability at any time, other than a couple things like the half stagger. You can use the wind thing to use the whip and kind of pull the person down for like an extra little mini stagger in the middle of the stagger bar, which is cool. And that's a big sacrifice when you want to get rid of Garuda, because I was like, man, I was like, I kind of feel like I need to get rid of Garuda to make room for Bahamut, but at the same time, it sucks to be losing that extra stagger that I had. If this were to just exist as Final Fantasy: The Fire of Ifrit, like the random title that I gave, but just because, I don't know, the Summoner's Curse, like, well, whatever. Call it whatever you want to call it, but I'm thinking that if it was just a subtitled Final Fantasy spin-off, like, if this is the Final Fantasy action game, I don't think anyone would have been like, yeah, well, I mean, it's a good game, but why did they call this Final Fantasy? I think everyone would be like, oh yeah, there was a lot about this that was very Final Fantasy. But putting a number on it, and needing to have all the baggage that a mainline numbered Final Fantasy game should carry with it really hurt this game a lot. It really, really made this go from being what I honestly, like, I think if the combat was a bit more in-depth, a bit more developed, and necessitated a bit more mastery of the mechanics, and it was just the linear action game with the exact same story, this would honestly be like a 9 out of 10 game. Like, it would be, and also, by the way, the performance was rock solid. That's another big thing for me in this type of game, especially more so than Tears of the Kingdom. Tears of the Kingdom gets a much bigger pass for being 30 FPS because it's a Nintendo Switch game. So while I think Nintendo sucks for not releasing better hardware even as an option, let me upgrade my Switch so that I can just play your games and have them run well. Like, that'd be good. Or also Sony, apparently. But that's not happening, so I can't really hate on them too much for that, because the team that made the game has no choice on how powerful the Nintendo Switch is. Also, the game design in Tears of the Kingdom is unbelievable. Like, it's really next level, to the point that it's really weird to think that we are probably going to get to the end of this year, and the game which pushed the gaming medium forward in the way that people are always saying we need more powerful consoles in order to do, the game that actually did some really crazy shit with game design this year was a Nintendo Switch game, everybody. And it was a large-scale open-world game. So it's not like, oh yeah, it's a Nintendo Switch game, but like, I mean, Tetris or something, like what? It's like, no, it's a big open world where you can kind of construct things, and like, there's all sorts of moving parts you can attach to things to make structures and machines, and people are doing really, really crazy stuff with it. Also, the quest design is done in a way where you just need to solve the puzzle. There is a fixed solution that you can always use, but ultimately the game lets you just do whatever works, which I think is really, really awesome. There's nothing like that in this game, really. Oh, you could say there is, in that do whatever works is, yeah, attack the enemy until the health bar's down. It's like, which types of attacks work best on which things? Some of them are better for hitting multiple enemies, some of them are better for just one. There's some AoE attacks, there's some passive attacks. I don't know, whatever. What do they all do? Like, what types of enemies are, like, oh, for example, can you confuse people? Can you put them to sleep? Can you create fire statuses and like burn them and then do damage over time that way? Can you freeze them with all your ice abilities? No. They just all do damage. Well, okay, but you know, like, obviously if you're fighting an ice enemy, like the fire will do more damage, right? No. So it's like, there's things like that you're just like, man, as much as I want to give a lot of credit to the combat system, it does feel a little undercooked at the same time. Even though it feels great to play, it feels polished in the sense that while you're playing it, it feels like they got that core 30 seconds of fun down, like the old Halo adage. But man, it's pretty light. It is pretty light on combat depth, considering how many moves you have in this game and how much flexibility you have in combining them, which to be honest is pretty decent. It's actually not terrible. It's not Devil May Cry 5, but it's not bad. I don't know. I think that there's like a 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 game in here, but right now it's like a 6, maybe a 5. Like, I'm kind of at a 5 with it ultimately, maybe a 6. I think if it performed consistently the entire way through, I might even like bump as far up as a 7 there. I don't think I'd go further than that though, because ultimately I think the downsides to the game design, more outside of the technical stuff, the downsides to the game design are they're not ignorable. Like, if you're actually analyzing it and trying to track like, hey, how good is this in comparison to other games like it, you are mostly talking about 2 games. You're talking about Devil May Cry and any Devil May Cry like, and you're talking about Final Fantasy XV, because this is more like 15, or this goes further away from what you would consider traditional Final Fantasy than 15 did. It goes a lot further into just doing its own thing. And on that note, I don't think anyone can make the argument that Final Fantasy XV was not real Final Fantasy if this one was, you know? And I'm okay with calling them both real Final Fantasy, because again, I'm not crazy about that distinction just because of how many weird things have happened in the Final Fantasy series and how many changes have been made to the presentation, the gameplay, the story. Like, I understand that Final Fantasy, the head title, or the top title Final Fantasy is just a collection of basic lore in that, like, yeah, there are summons that generally have the same names. There are chocobos, there are moogles, spells and spell names, of which there wasn't a whole ton of in here, though there was. They were mentioned, like Firaga. That's how you do charge attacks. It's just you're selecting them less often, so you weren't seeing the names up on screen as much in this game, or they were just in the corner of the screen. And that's pretty much, and then general themes. The general themes being the, like, archetypical JRPG, like, we're gonna team up with the power of friendship and anime to kill a god, like that. And that happens in a lot of JRPGs. Okay, that is not, it's not exclusively a Final Fantasy thing, but it does happen in a lot of Final Fantasy games. Not nearly enough hair gel, Andrew Matthews. there was not nearly enough hair product in this game to be real Final Fantasy. Okay, no, I'll revise. There wasn't nearly enough hair gel in this game to be Tetsuya Nomura Final Fantasy. It's very clear that he didn't design these characters. Or, I mean, I guess I wasn't really looking. Did he? If he did, I'm impressed, Tetsuya. Holy shit. Because if those are Tetsuya Nomura characters, I don't even know who I am. Because I'm just like, wait. You gave people, like, relatively normal hairstyles? Like, pretty normal for the most part. I mean, Clive's got kind of spiky hair, I guess, but it's still like, it looks like a man's hair that has grown out. Like, and I mean, Sid just has like short, high and tight. Yeah, like I mean, it's not. There are not a lot of clouds, not a lot of promptos or squalls or Noctis. Pretty much any character that Tetsuya Nomura has ever developed. Other than that, I don't know what else I would want to really say about this game in the form of a like, hey, just kind of quick after action review type deal. But I mean, I think if you have a PS5 and you're not planning to get a PC, and if a PS5 Pro gets announced, you'd be like, okay, fuck that, I just bought this PS5. Probably get it if you thought that this looked cool, or maybe borrow it from a friend, like a physical copy. I don't think I can recommend buying it. I mean, as much as, I mean, okay. I gotta be careful here because I understand that there's a lot of people that will buy this game, play this game, and absolutely love it. And I don't necessarily want to encourage those people to not buy this game. I just think if you're on the fence, even a little bit, wait it out. Because this version of this game is the worst it will ever be. It is the most expensive it will ever be right now. It is the worst performing it will ever be, and I'm willing to bet they might even make some tweaks and things like that to some of the gameplay systems. And Nomura was not involved. Okay, so at least I'm correct about that. But to be fair, I'm not like, oh, he definitely directed. Like I was like, he definitely did not. Like my whole thing was like, these are not Tetsuya Nomura characters because I played a fair amount of his games. Granted, none of his Kingdom Hearts games though. To be fair, and that's kind of his magnum opus. Which, makes me really scared about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, because I think I'm souring more on Final Fantasy VII Remake as I get further from it, and I don't know if that's just because I don't know, like I almost think if I went back and played it now, I might even enjoy it more, because, or maybe, I don't know, maybe not. Not sure. I did like the combat system in it, though. The Final Fantasy VII Remake combat system I thought was probably the perfect mix of real-time and turn-based. If you were going to combine those two into one system that's, hey, it's kind of Devil May Cry-ish, but also it's kind of just normal-ass Final Fantasy with an active time battle gauge. Yeah, I'd say Final Fantasy VII is probably the closest you're going to get to a middle ground between those two things that don't seem like they seem as if they are very mutually exclusive. Real-time action and turn-based menu combat seem to be at the polar ends of the spectrum. But I do think that Final Fantasy VII did do it well. Final Fantasy VII Remake. And we're only talking about combat, so anyone jumping on me about the changes they made to the story of Final Fantasy, I'm iffy on those, and mostly I think I need to see how it all pans out before I start shit talking it, because I'm not crazy about the let's go back and do kind of a semi reboot thing. At the same time, that did keep me on my toes anytime those ghost things showed up in Remake, because I do know the story of 7 quite well. I'm interested to see how Rebirth ends up being, though. I think we've got a year out on that. However, if it is a 30 FPS game like this one is, I am going to wait for the PC version, because I feel like I probably did you guys a disservice by how bothered I was by the way this game performed, yet I decided to continue streaming the entire thing. Because honestly, I think if I wasn't streaming it, I probably would have just been like, man, I don't know if I'm going to finish this. And you know what? The story, though, is what pulled me across the finish line, realistically. And it's why I finished it on Wednesday, the week after it came out, as opposed to a month from now. Because I just kind of wanted to get through it. I didn't like exploring. I didn't want to go to the maps again and chase down green waypoints and gain side quest points. I just wanted to get it over with. I love the story, and I think the characters are awesome. So I would really love to just be like, yeah, man, real-time action game or not, this is the best Final Fantasy game after 6. Like, it's 6, then 16. It's like they make a good run every 10 on the 6. Can't wait for Final Fantasy 26, but no, it's a diamond that is still very much encased in coal. You can just see some nice glimmers. And at certain angles, those glimmers are really shiny, man. It's like, oh yeah, this is a good diamond in here. It's like, what about all that shit on it? Don't worry about that. So we're gonna take it off, right? Well, no. I mean, maybe in like 2 years we'll take it off. But no, for now, no. It's staying for now. All the coal encasing this diamond. Yeah, we're not taking that off. You can't. Yeah, but I want to put it on my wife's finger. So what's up with that? Yeah, put it on with the coal. That's what putting this game into your PlayStation 5 right now is. You're putting a diamond into your PS5 that is encased in coal. I recommend waiting until they knock the coal off. And by that, I sadly probably mean more powerful hardware than the PS5. Unless they fiddle around with the modes, give us some better access to the graphics settings. Say, hey, people really like playing the combat at 60 FPS, even though it's running at like 720p and upscaled like crazy. It still looks good and plays well in combat. So you know what? Let's just let people play it like that from beginning to end. I'll be really happy, not gonna lie, but I'm probably not gonna go back and play it on PS5. Again, like that, this is likely the last time I will ever touch the PlayStation version of this game. Luckily though, my wife is still playing it, so you know, it's not like we're getting no use out of it, and that's a digital copy, so it's no disc to sell either. I don't know that I'd want to rate them against each other too far, but I'd say that this, if it's not one of the best, this is at the very least amongst my favorite Final Fantasy stories. And that is not nothing, everybody. So I'm not saying this game is terrible. When I say it's a 5, I'm like saying for all the points that stacked up from median, it also had a bunch that were knocking it right back down, and it stayed at level. It's kind of I'm trying this system with trying to explain scores or like explain how much I liked a game with numbers, because I don't like using scores, but very often people will ask for one. And I was talking this about Lofty actually on this stream, talking about this with Lofty on this stream the other day, where I say that you don't start at a 10 and then remove points when things are shitty. You gotta like start at a 5 and add things that are good as well as removing things that are bad. Having like unity, like a 5 out of 10, middle of the scale, be the starting point, I think is the only way that works, because then you have equal ample ability to add as well as equal and ample ability to subtract from what will eventually be your main number, you know? So I mean, and the only reason I'm getting this pedantic about it is because I hate numbered review scores, but I also understand that a lot of people do like hearing them. So right now, Final Fantasy XVI in its current state, 5. It's a 5. I'm sorry, I can't. It is the performance that's dragging it down from the 6. If it performed well, it would at least be a 6, maybe even a 7. But I can't get past that because I can't recommend it. You know, like that's kind of the thing. It's like I can't recommend you buy this version of this game, even though I strongly recommend that you play this game someday. All right. Well, for more super specific reviews like this, subscribe to MarcTheCyborg, everybody. This is Baby Jojo. She's a puppy. Oh, and hey, and there's Rocky. He's also a puppy.